Robert A. Heinlein. He has been called the Dean of American Science Fiction. His ideas are still innovative and radical. His characters are unforgettable. His stories redefined a genre. The Atlanta Radio Theater Company, in cooperation with Mrs. Virginia Heinlein, presents The Dean's List, selected stories of Robert A. Heinlein, dramatized and fully soundscaped for audio.
Before Pearl Harbor, before the war in Europe became a world war, Robert A. Heinlein considered the consequences of an unrestricted arms race. He foresaw the possibility of a Cold War, a time of tensions and uncertainty, with both major powers possessing doomsday weapons and increasingly itchy trigger fingers. We approached the brink of nuclear war in 1962 and stepped back. Witness now the prescience of the Dean of Science Fiction, who saw it coming in 1941. Follow a chain of events extraordinary, leading to a problem unprecedented and a solution unsatisfactory.
My name is John DeFries. You won't have heard of me. I'm an ordinary sort of man who found himself shoved into the councils of the rulers. But I found that the rulers were ordinary men too, and frequently as bewildered as I was. Now, Clyde Manning was no ordinary man. Yes, the Manning. Colonel Clyde C. Manning, U.S. Army retired, Mr. Commissioner Manning, the so-called military dictator of the world. There is another side to any story, even world dominion.
November 15th, 1943. Riots erupted again in the streets of Detroit and Philadelphia as interventionist and isolationist groups clashed over America's continuing neutrality in the European War, now dragging into its 5th year. The isolationist cause seems to be losing the support of John Q. Citizen as many U.S. Army flyboys resign their commissions officially and take to the skies as members of the RAF.
RAF bombers continued to harass German forces as well as munitions factories in Munich and Dresden. The Nazi troops continue fighting on two fronts as they push their way
towards the Eastern Front, liberating thousands enslaved by the Bolshevists and their vile puppeteers in Moscow. There is celebratory mode in Eastern Europe as the victorious German troops march into the heart of the
Russian winter. Germany has claimed a few worthless tracts of land as its soldiers are lured toward the collectives, defended by resourceful proletarian farmers willing to make the necessary sacrifices to ensure the inevitable defeat of fascism. And in other news,
In the late 30s, Colonel Manning had been given a medical discharge due to a heart condition. But his background in chemical warfare and atomic theory made him the perfect candidate for a very special job. In late 1943, Manning took charge of the Federal Nuclear Research Laboratory, known, by those few who knew of it, as Special Defense Project Number 347.
Well, Colonel Manning, we started on a shoestring at the university. Then we came to the attention of people in high places, and everything changed. Unless you're going to tell us the free ride is over.
No, Dr. Ridpath, I'm not here to tighten the purse strings. My job is just to nudge you now and then.
Towards military applications?
Well,
weapons?
I won't deny it, but I think there's room for theoretical research as well. I believe in giving serendipity a chance to happen.
That's a welcome attitude, Colonel.
Thank you, Doctor. In a nutshell, though, how close are you to having a nuclear bomb?
I could build one, today?
You're kidding, of course.
Oh, no, not at all. However, it might explode as soon as it's loaded. As for the force of the explosion, well, my figures, they run out to so many digits, I'm not sure I believe them myself. The problem has been to make it weak enough to blow up only one country at a time, and stable enough to wait until after we drop it. I have no doubt...
Dr. Karst,
yes, John?
Chief from Physio Medical, can you see her?
In a moment, John. Of course, you know that...
Dr. Karst is probably here to complain about me, Colonel.
Oh?
I think I should leave your office by the side door, if I may.
Dr. Ridpath?
Oh, I insist. I have spent the last 3 months being stalked by the good doctor. It's your turn now. After all, I'm not in charge anymore. You are. Good day, Colonel.
Excuse me, Captain.
Dr. Karst?
It's all right, John. Good morning, Major.
Don't call me Major.
Sorry, Doctor.
This isn't a social call. I came on business and must get right back, and I presume you're a busy man too, Colonel Manning. I need some help.
That's what I'm here for, Dr. Karst.
Good. I've run into some snags in my research. I think that Dr. Ober could help me, but Dr. Ridpath hasn't been cooperative.
I can understand Dr. Ridpath's reluctance. After all, the high-explosive research is really
Colonel
more than...
Manning, do you realize the importance of artificial radioactives to modern medicine?
Why, I believe I do. Nevertheless, Doctor, our primary mission is to perfect a weapon which
Weapon
will...
fiddlesticks! Isn't it more important to know how to heal men than know how to blow them to bits?
Well,
Colonel Manning, you are not a fit man to have in charge of this project. You're a warmonger. That's what you are.
I'm sorry you feel that way, Doctor. In any case, I have not refused your request. Let's walk over to your lab and see what the problem is. Likely there's some arrangement we can make which will satisfy everybody.
Very well. I'm sorry I spoke as I did.
Not at all. These are worrying times. Come along, John.
Is this armor absolutely necessary?
Absolutely, Captain.
And this breathing filter?
Radioactive dust guard. It, too, is absolutely essential. Too great a risk of cancer, radiation burn, sterility, or worse.
Isn't there some other way of controlling that?
It would be quite expensive.
No trouble about that. Must be very annoying to have to work this way.
It is.
Doctor,
Yes, Captain.
I apologize.
For what?
I've done nothing but complain about this radiation suit for the last 5 minutes, while you and your people work in these things for 8 hours a day.
More like 10. Sometimes 12, actually. It's amazing what you can get used to when you have to. Care to arm wrestle?
I don't think so.
In the meantime, Doctor, you might draw up plans for what you want to re-equip your laboratory. I'll see that you get it.
Oh, thank you, Colonel.
May I ask what that is?
Oh, that? That's an air conditioner.
I've never seen one like it.
It doesn't condition the air of this room. It washes the radioactive dust out of our exhaust air.
Where does the water go?
Down the drain. Out into the bay eventually, I suppose.
Well, that accounts for it, Colonel.
Accounts for what?
Accounts for those accusing notes we've been getting from the Bureau of Fisheries. This dust is killing the fish in Chesapeake Bay.
Do you think that's possible, Doctor?
Well, it is possible, yes. However, it would be simple enough to divert this drain to a sinkhole of some sort.
Yes. I'm going to see to it that you get Ober's assistance, Doctor.
Oh, good.
But I want you to help me in return. I'm very much interested in this research of yours. I'd like to see it carried on with a broader scope.
But, Colonel, the medical needs are
And
not...
I shall make it my business to expedite every possible facility for such research. I think we may turn up a number of interesting things.
Well, as so often happens, the breakthrough Colonel Manning was looking for turned out to be the unwanted waste product, the dust. Dr. Ridpath believed that he was still many years from being able to control the explosive power of U-235. Thus, he and Dr. Ober gradually assumed those parts of Dr. Karst's department not directly related to medical applications. That is, the refinement and manufacture of radioactive dust. I think Dr. Karst was perfectly happy to be left alone.
June 30th, 1944. British troops once again repelled a Nazi invasion, this time off the coast of Wales. My source says this one was launched from the northern shore of France. Are there any more questions about the neutrality of the Vichy government?
Praised the announcement of a meeting between the Chancellor of the Reich and the new party secretary in Moscow. The Prime Minister fears that Russia is suing for a separate peace.
Peace between the German people and our Russian brothers will free our troops to concentrate on the remaining belligerents, the English.
The English proletarians, said Comrade Secretary, should join the rest of workers in Europe and overcome their true enemy, the capitalist of the United States.
Mr. President?
Colonel Manning, good to see you again. And this is Captain DeFries.
John DeFries, Mr. President, it's an honor.
You're supposed to salute your commander-in-chief, son.
I mean,
Never mind. Sorry, son. I know you don't much stand on rank in the lab. I'm just having a little fun. God knows there's little enough of it to go around.
yes, sir.
I wanted to brief you myself, Mr. President. If you turn this down, it's my considered opinion that no one else must ever know about it.
Well, the Chief of Staff and the Secretary of War are not pleased about being left out of this meeting. It would be entertaining under other circumstances.
Begging your pardon, but should I be here?
I may have a very important task for you, Captain. You will need to know the background.
Yes, Mr. President.
You sound as if you've already made a decision.
Well, I've read your notes. Let's say I'm prepared to make a decision, depending on how this briefing goes.
Have you seen the photographs of the test animals? The horses?
Yes. I like horses.
I do too, sir. I hated to do it. Hell of a way to die. Radiation poisoning. Slow and excruciating.
I have seen the photographs.
Of course, sir. Sorry. All right. We have a weapon that cannot be stopped. Any type of karst obra dust scattered over an area renders that area uninhabitable.
For how long?
That depends on the half-life of the radioactivity. We can fine-tune it, produce anything from 6-month dust to 2-year dust to, well, practically forever. Once an area is dusted, there's nothing that can be done about it until the radioactivity falls off to the point where it's no longer harmful. The dust cannot be cleaned out or counteracted.
Will it burn or combine chemically with some other substance?
Yes, but the isotope remains radioactive.
What about armor or protective clothing?
It's effective enough, provided you never take it off. You might survive an attack if you happen to be wearing lead armor when it comes, but you can't live that way.
I see. So it's easy to make, easy to use, and hideously effective.
That's about the size of it.
So do we use it or bury it in a very deep hole?
Bury it?
Is something wrong, John?
Excuse me, sir. It's not my place to interrupt.
Not at all, Captain. I want your perspective. And I know the Colonel has a high regard of your opinions. Speak up.
Thank you, sir. Sirs. Well, I know that the situation in Europe is worse than the newspapers are letting on. France is lost, and it seems inevitable that England will follow. If the United States can put a stop to this war, it seems to me that we're morally obligated to do it.
Well, if we did, the dust wouldn't be a secret any longer.
No, I suppose not.
I'm afraid it won't be a secret for long anyway. We only stumbled onto it by accident. If we ever use it, our enemies will know what it is they're looking for, and they'll find it all the sooner. But they'll find it eventually anyway.
Then the whole world will be comparable to a locked room full of armed men, all offense and no defense. It is inconceivable to me that such a situation, such an intolerable level of international tension could be sustained for long. If everyone has this weapon, sooner or later someone will use it. So our options are: 1, bury the dust, pretend we never developed it, and watch Europe fall. 2, use the dust to end the war and nothing more. Wait for everyone else to develop it independently and worry about what they'll use it for when they do. 3, use the dust first and drastically. Get the upper hand and keep it. World dominion. It goes against everything this nation has ever stood for.
That's why this is a decision only you can make, sir.
We are not at war officially, yet. But we have been on the war up to our necks on the side of democracy since 1940. Every day that goes by, the situation worsens. Now, circumstances allow us not merely to enter the war in a position of strength, but to end it decisively.
Mr. President, frankly, I don't trust anyone with dust, not even the United States. Current administration accepted.
You have a great deal of faith in my incorruptibility, Colonel Manning, more perhaps than I. But that is a problem for another day. I intend to follow the procedures you have outlined. We will use, Captain DeFries.
Me, sir.
Captain, I expect to send you to England as my representative.
Yes, Mr. President.
You will accompany a supply of dust to Great Britain and turn it over to them on my approval. They will enforce a peace on our terms. The United States has had power thrust upon us. If we do not accept it, some other nation will. And they will not be nearly so tolerant of us as I hope we will be of them.
I flew to London carrying papers appointing me a special agent of the President of the United States. It was unprecedented. My person was very nearly as sacred as that of the President himself, and I would stay on that plane until I turned the dust over to the British. The President spent the next week trying to avert the need to use the dust. As Manning put it, we were calling halt 3 times before firing. I do not think that he or the President expected it to work, but we had to try.
July 27th, 1944. The President has just concluded the first of 2 talks. That's right, America. Talks with Der Fuhrer himself. The big deal? Televisor hookups were used for the first time during the negotiations.
Negotiations are proceeding between the American President and the Chancellor of the Reich. Number 10 has announced the cessation of all bombing in mainland Europe. Our pilots are instead dropping leaflets that outline the British plans for peace. These plans
are a preposterous call for the surrender of the Reich to the nearly defeated British government. Meanwhile, the Reich's American ambassador appeased the Americans by making a pointless trip to western Texas, reportedly to observe the effects of a supposed new weapon, a weapon the Americans tout as
unprecedented move. The President will harangue the German people on their radios this Sunday. Seems that the President speaks fluent German, so now it's their turn to receive the
heavy damage inflicted by German bombers continuing to cross the channel. These raids are not directed at dockyards or factories, but appear to be random, ruthless destruction. In stark contrast, British bombers
are once again littering the countryside with propaganda. These leaflets contain photographs of a herd of steers, supposedly killed by the American weapon. The text vaunts the
Chancellor and the President ended their second parley cordially enough, but those in the know remain in a skeptical mood.
Mood in Britain is one of cold fury. As the leader of the opposition said in Parliament, whatever the Americans hope to accomplish with their negotiations, they had better do it soon.
Soon we must all leave our cities. According to the latest and increasingly desperate propaganda leaflets, British bombers are racing across the fatherland. Unlike the previous 2, these contain no terms, no conditions, only a warning to get out of our cities and to stay out.
It was the longest week of my life.
Don't see what you chaps are waiting for. What the Jerrys need is a dose of their own Schrecklichkeit, a lesson in their own Aryan culture. I know you Americans have got the cheek to do it. You refused a royal summons.
Well, that wasn't cheek. I'm under orders not to leave this airplane under any circumstances.
Just the same, my soul blinked. His Majesty and the Prime Minister came to see you.
No one's supposed to know that.
They travel in a bleeding caravan, sir. You can't miss it. Just the same, if anyone asks, I didn't see anything.
Right.
So when will something happen?
I don't know.
I just hope it's soon.
I'll be just as pleased if we don't have to do anything, so long as I can get out of this plane and feel the sun on my face.
Not much chance of that in London at this time of year, Captain.
I guess not.
Captain DeFries?
Yes.
Washington signaling.
Oh, sorry, Lieutenant. I'll have to ask you to leave.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm triggering transmission. Descrambling. We're in the clear.
Captain DeFries?
Yes, Mr. President.
Carry out your basic instructions, Captain DeFries.
Acknowledged, Mr. President. My God. Lieutenant.
Sir?
I have a message for the Commandant.
Blimey.
On line of bearing, Captain.
Very good, pilot. Bombardier, ready 1.
Ready 1.
Release.
Released.
Ready 2.
Ready 2.
Release.
Released.
It's August 6th, 1944. and the president's deadline has passed. Now we will see just how
During
daring...
an overnight raid on the city of Berlin itself, unconfirmed reports of a new type of American bomb.
The British have attempted major American attack on Berlin using the Americans' much vaunted secret weapon, but the raiders were driven off with only minor damage. The mighty war machine of the Reich stands ready to reply. Oh my God, my insides, they feel like they're on fire. Oh, Wasser, bitte, oh my God.
An American observer now en route back home is said to have accompanied the bombs to London and participated in the raid.
The raid completed surprisingly enough without the loss of a single British plane.
The field marshal is indisposed and unable to continue his remarks. Stand by for... Stand by...
I was struck by how much the German broadcast sounded like Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. Of course, Mr. Welles hadn't actually killed anybody in Grover's Mill. By some miracle, the RAF aerial photography from Berlin arrived in Washington at about the same time I did. You have not seen these photos. They were never made public. Dr. Ridpath screened them for us at the laboratory.
The pilots who made these pictures died of dust inhalation within the week. It need not have happened, but they thought our precautions were unnecessarily extreme. Now, these are telephoto shots of the city of Berlin. At this range, there is not much to see, just busy and crowded streets with an excessive number of automobile accidents. Now, this was taken on the second day, showing the attempt to evacuate. The inner squares of the city are practically deserted, but the streets leading out of town are boiling with people, mostly on foot. As you can see, the dust works at different rates depending on the degree of exposure, as we expected. Those at the point of impact died within minutes. Others, further from the initial contact, lingered for several days.
My God, look at that woman. Look at her face. The agony she must be enduring. Do we know who she is?
No. This last sequence shows Berlin and the roads around it a week after the raid. The city is dead. There is not a man, a woman, a child left alive. Bodies are all around, but they're safe from the rats, because there are no rats. Are there any questions?
I think you've said just about everything there is to say, Dr.
Karst.
What a salesman you are, Colonel Manning. I actually believed I was saving lives.
But you were. We did, Doctor. The destruction of property, the death of British innocents, and Germans for that matter. It's over. We did save lives. We had to do it.
You had to?
Yes.
I'm sure that would be a great comfort to that German woman, Colonel.
Dr. Karst.
Goodbye, Colonel.
Should I go after her, Colonel?
No, John, let her go. I'll talk to her later.
Do you want me to do it?
Thank you, Dr. Ridpath, but I think it'll have to be me. I'm the warmonger here.
Well, that's why she might talk easier to me. That's from the dust canning room.
Let's go. John, shut that damn thing off. What's the situation, Corporal?
It's Dr. Karst, Colonel. I didn't know what she was going to do. She's in there.
Where?
Just walked in as usual.
In here, Colonel. The dust room.
And took off her armor.
My God.
Oh, no.
Dr. Karst, what are you doing?
Dying, I think. It won't take long at this level of exposure.
But why?
I had to. Just like you, Colonel.
Come out of there.
Oh, why? I'm dead already. Remember the woman in Berlin, Colonel? I do. We got a nice long close-up of her agony. Agony. That's what you called it, wasn't it, Captain? I can tell you now. Agony doesn't begin to describe it. I remember she stumbled and fell. Perhaps she was trampled. I hope so.
We warned them repeatedly. We told them to leave the city. We gave them all the warning in the world.
You took my life's work and turned it against me.
No.
Invalidated everything I've ever lived for, everything I've ever tried to do. And you can look me in the eye and say, you had to. Are you proud of yourself?
In all honesty, no. I can't say I'm particularly proud.
Colonel?
Yes, Dr. Karst.
Go to hell.
It is now August 25th, 1944, and there have been no communications, official or otherwise, from the Reich since the bombing of Berlin.
The German provisional government in Bonn, having rallied around a cousin of the old Kaiser, has sued for peace.
Seeing the general conditions in Germany, the president has recommended leniency in the terms of surrender.
His Majesty answered eloquently that the German people do not deserve our vengeance, but our compassion.
Manning quickly became an unofficial member of the cabinet. Secretary of Dust, the president sometimes called him.
I believe the question we must address is what now? I have some ideas on the matter, of course, but I'm sure all of you do, but I'd like to hear from Colonel Manning first.
Thank you, Mr. President. I propose that we begin by immobilizing all aircraft throughout the world.
Aren't you being a little fantastic, Colonel Manning?
Who's that? Ah, the Secretary of Commerce. I beg your pardon, madam. No, I'm not. I'm being realistic. Without aircraft, the dust is an inefficient weapon. The only way I see to gain enough time to deal with the problem is to ground them all. All aircraft, that is, not actually in the service of the United States Army.
Really now, you're not proposing that commercial airlines be put out of operation.
I propose to do just that. All. I realize this will put the Secretary of Commerce in a difficult position.
Difficult does not begin to cover it, Colonel. Am I to infer that you intend this prohibition to apply to the United States as well as other nations?
Naturally.
But that's impossible. It's unconstitutional. It violates civil rights.
Killing a man violates his civil rights, too. The issue is sharp, and we might as well drag it out in the open. We can be dead with everything in due order, constitutional, and technically correct, or we can do what has to be done. Stay alive, and try to straighten out the legal aspects later.
What you're proposing is a military dictatorship imposed by force on the whole world. Now admit it, Colonel, isn't that what you're proposing?
Yes.
That is exactly what I'm proposing, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. Now we know where we stand. Well, I, for one, do not regard democratic measures and constitutional procedure to be of so little importance that I'm willing to jettison them anytime it becomes convenient.
Nor do I.
What do you propose?
I propose that we treat this as an opportunity to create a worldwide democratic commonwealth.
Like the League of Nations.
No, not the League of Nations. The old League was helpless because it had no real existence. It had no power. This would be different, for we would turn over the dust to it.
Mr. Vice President, if you turn the secret of the dust over to such a body, you'll be arming the world to commit suicide.
The trouble with you, Colonel Manning, is that you're a professional soldier, and you have no faith in people. Now, soldiers may be necessary, but the worst of them are martinets, and the best are merely paternalistic.
Maybe I'm all of those things, but you haven't met my argument. What are you going to do about the hundreds of millions of people who have no experience in nor love for democracy? I say that such a body will democratically vote to destroy the United States with the dust you will have given them. Perhaps they'll say it's to protect themselves, just in case we've invented something else we want to drop on them. Or perhaps they'll just do it out of sheer hatred. But we will have planes and a supply of dust in reserve. So back and forth it will go until each side has broken down so completely that we're no longer able to keep planes in the air. By then, 3/4 of the world's population will be dead of dust, disease, or hunger, and culture will be reduced to peasants and villages. Where's your Constitution and your Bill of Rights if you let that happen?
Aren't you getting a bit hysterical, Colonel? I mean, after all, the world has seen a lot of weapons which were going to make the war an impossibility too horrible to contemplate. Poison gas, tanks, airplanes, even firearms, if I remember my history.
You've made a point, General. And when the wolf really came, the little boy shouted in vain. The dust differs from every earlier weapon in its deadliness and ease of use, but most importantly in that there can be no defense against it.
Colonel Manning, I think you have overlooked the obvious alternative.
Obvious? Perhaps the Secretary of State will enlighten us.
Yes, to keep the dust as our own secret, go our own way, let the rest of the world look out for itself. That's the only program that fits our traditions.
Mr. Secretary, the Germans were close on our heels in nuclear research. It was sheer luck that we got there first. Dr. Ridpath estimates that the staff of any modern radiation laboratory should be able to work out an equivalent technique in 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
6 weeks, just from the hint given by the events in Berlin alone. They should then be able to produce enough dust to cause major destruction in another 6 weeks. That gives us, 90 days. 90 days, provided they started from scratch and were not already halfway to their goal. Less than 90 days, perhaps no time at all.
September 5th, 1944. Having won a war that we were not officially in, the president today declared a state of full emergency and sent his peace proclamation to the head of every sovereign state.
The United States is prepared to defeat any power or combination of powers,
outlawing war and demanding a unilateral disarmament.
And he's called a party for all aircraft capable of crossing the Atlantic. They're to be delivered in 1 week's time to a field just west of Fort Riley, Kansas.
For lesser aircraft, a spot near Shanghai and a rendezvous in Wales.
The American president accepts no excuses. Failure to disarm would be construed as an act of war.
Oh, here's a surprise. In a prepared statement, the Japanese emperor said he was pleased to declare a new era of cooperation.
The Crown is prepared to trust our American friends with gratitude for the great service they have done for England and the world.
It is fitting that the great powers should use their greatness to ensure a lasting peace. The Secretary goes on to request a minor extension of the deadline due to a shortage of fuel necessary to make the long flight over the Arctic safely.
There were no cases of apoplexy in the Senate. Why not? I don't know. Colonel Manning went west to supervise the immobilization of the transoceanic planes near Fort Riley.
This is Sanders at the field.
Manning aboard Raven 1. Request current status of Russian bombers.
This is Sanders at the field. Now, fighter escort located them at the Canadian border, headed our way. You should have visual any minute now to the northeast.
No contact, Saunders. Stand by.
Standing by.
You seem fidgety, Colonel.
And I will be until those planes are down. That's why I wanted to observe them from the air. The Russians are the biggest question mark left in this death dance, and I'll feel better when I know their intentions for sure.
But what else can you do?
More than you'd think. We got Congress to adjourn for the week, didn't we? And the President arranged for 10-day leaves for most of the civil service. Washington is as deserted as it will ever be.
I know. It took some fancy vote juggling to get that adjournment through. Are you expecting some kind of attack?
Can't hurt to be ready. After all, Washington would be their most important target, along with New York.
Yes. Of course, New York is already in chaos thanks to that bubonic plague scare. It's a ghost town as it is.
Is it? That's interesting timing, isn't it? Don't you find it curious that they haven't actually reported any confirmed cases of the plague?
What? Colonel, what are you saying?
All I'm saying is that a city that big will not be, never has been, evacuated in response to rational argument. Look at London. Look at Berlin. But the fear of an epidemic of plague has caused the most nearly complete evacuation of a major city ever seen.
I'll be damned.
That's possible. Me first.
Colonel?
Yes, Lieutenant Rafferty?
I've got them. 9 of them. 3 o'clock.
I see them.
What the devil? They're preparing to land downwind.
Downwind?
So?
You don't land downwind if you can help it, Colonel. Especially not something that big.
They're not landing. Get the field.
Got him, sir.
General alarm! Armor!
Oh, God.
Do you still have the field?
Yes, sir.
Saunders, this is Manning. How about it?
Radioactive, Chief. Intensity 7.4.
Damn.
Raise the Chief of Staff, now. It stands to reason that other flights...
Chief of Staff, Colonel.
Manning here. Russia has dust. Repeat, Russia has dust. Their bombers are dusting the field at Fort Riley. Other flights are probably approaching the border by now.
Acknowledged, Colonel.
If the president had waited to fight it out with Congress before issuing the peace proclamation, there would not now be any United States. The president's deadline forced the Russians to move before they were ready. They really were short on fuel. They tried to fight a conventional war with a highly unconventional weapon. We simply dusted every landing field of theirs we could find. Soon they couldn't land without killing their pilots. By the time they caught on, it was too late. The world spun dizzyingly fast those next few weeks.
September 12th, 1944. Congress has reconvened at the temporary capital in St. Louis. Their first order of business, accept the Russian surrender.
The United States must keep the dust for the time being until some permanent institution can be developed fit to retain it.
The United States now has the power to turn the entire globe into an empire, and it is my sober opinion that our characteristic and beloved democratic culture will not stand up under the temptation.
Congress is quickly rubber-stamping treaties with Great Britain, Germany, and Russia. In a nutshell, we are responsible for world peace. But wait, there are guarantees against the president's misuse of power. Other treaties will follow.
World Safety Act will create the Commission of World Safety. The Commission will take charge of all world aircraft and assume jurisdiction over all radioactives.
This awesome power must not be used to protect American investments abroad. It must not be used to coerce trade agreements.
The Commission will be a joint trust crossing international borders, and commissioners will take an oath to preserve the peace of the world. The Commission will not interfere with or replace civil government. It will have no role in national or international commerce.
It must not be used for any purpose but the simple abolition of mass killing.
And in a surprise move, I mean really a surprise move, the Senate confirmed the nomination of Colonel Clyde C. Manning as the first commissioner.
Commissioner Manning opened the World Safety Patrol Training Academy, open to youths of any race, color, or nationality.
With a little horse sense and the will to do it, we can build a new world. Let us all prove ourselves worthy of it. Thank you.
It was an astounding thing to watch. This large and diverse world suddenly so much smaller and so much more fragile. And at least for now, with unity of purpose never seen on such a scale. Had Manning been allowed 20 years without interruption, the original plan might have worked.
April 12th, 1945. It is with genuine sadness that I must report that the President of the United States died this morning of a cerebral hemorrhage.
Even though he was not in the best of health, the news still comes as a shock to a stunned America, still rebuilding from the 4 Days' War.
I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Commissioner Manning?
John, you look a little green. Sit down.
I'm fine, Chief. I'm fine. We've just received a dispatch from the Vice President. I mean the President.
So?
You're ordered to report to him immediately.
Of course.
Are you going, Chief?
Oh, why, certainly. He is the President. Never mind your hat and coat, John. You're not going. I need you to make some calls. Mr. President.
Ah, Manning. You're prompt, I see. Good. Well, we might as well come straight to the point. There are going to be some changes of policy in this administration. I want your resignation.
I'm sorry to have to refuse, sir.
We'll see about that. In the meantime, Colonel Manning, you're relieved from duty.
Mr. Commissioner Manning, if you please.
One way or the other, you're relieved. Either way.
I'm sorry to disagree again. My appointment is for life.
That's enough. This is the United States of America, and there can be no higher authority. You're under arrest.
You are physically able to arrest me, I will concede, but I advise you to wait a few minutes. Look to the sky.
Mr. President, airplanes approaching from the southeast.
Oh, that can't be. Every plane in the world has been grounded and dusted.
Begging the President's pardon, there are at least 6 in the air. Bombers.
Those are world safety bomber patrols, Mr. President. My bombers. None of those pilots is American-born. If you can find me, none of us here in this room will live out the day.
Manning, I'm your commander-in-chief, and I order
With
you...
respect, Mr. President, you are not.
You wouldn't. What are you going to do?
Do? I don't intend to do anything. I'm just going back to my office. I have work to do, as I'm sure you do, Mr. President.
April 14th, 1945. Today, bombers were spotted over the Provisional White House. If anyone knows why the planes were there, they're not talking. Nor is anyone saying why they departed so soon after them.
The commissioner offered his sympathy to the family of the late president and pledged to cooperate with the incoming president.
In these times, any sighting of aircraft over civilian areas is a cause for concern.
As to who arranged for this little air show, my money is on Commissioner Manning. You know, the most powerful man in the world.
Commissioner Manning reassured an anxious public that the planes were on a routine training mission.
The peoples of the earth face the future with grave uncertainty, composed almost equally of great hopes and great fears.
So he let you leave?
I left. I stood there for a minute and let him think about it. Then I just left. I am now the undisputed military dictator of the world.
You know that's not so.
I know that's what the newspapers will say tomorrow. I threatened the president, John. He won't let that go.
I'll have some press releases by noon. Maybe we can get our version out first. Relax, Commissioner. This is just another political campaign. Our people know how to handle that.
Well, maybe so. But it does mean an uphill battle for pilot recruitment. In order for this World Safety Patrol to work, we need to attract the right kind of officer, someone who won't crack under the strain. The late president had a feeling for character that no amount of psychological testing could equal. And my reputation is going to suffer too. For myself, I don't mind, but the commission must be honorable and trustworthy in order to be effective. The new president is going to blame me for New York, Berlin, and everything in between. John? John, are you all right?
I think so. Sorry, Commissioner.
Have you seen anybody about that cough?
Yes.
Well?
It's not going to get any better.
What? You're a young man.
I'm a man who spent a week in London sitting on a plane full of radioactive dust.
What?
Must have been very low-level contagion to work this slowly.
Why didn't you tell me?
You had other things on your mind. There was no help for it, and there was still work to be done. There still is.
Well, yes, there still is. And it won't be easier with you working only part-time.
Chief.
Don't argue. If you won't rest up for your own sake, you'll do it for mine. I still need you for as long as I can have you.
The doctors say it's inoperable.
The doctors don't know everything, and they especially don't know much about radioactivity. I'll have Dr. Ridpath put Dr. Karst's unit to work for you. Maybe she'd appreciate that.
And there's still your heart to consider.
My heart is fine.
The president was fine 3 days ago. You may last another 20 years. You may keel over dead tomorrow. Now, I've got a staff that already does most of my job for me, but there is no one to replace you.
Up until a few minutes ago, I was counting on you.
Me? I don't want the job.
Neither do I, my friend. Neither do I.
Tonight's shows were written by Daniel Taylor. Actors appearing in the show tonight were Karen Barrett, David Benedict, Ron Butler, Phil Carter, Pat Ceccato, Peter David, Dena Friedman, Thomas E. Fuller, Bill Jackson, Doug Kay, Clair Kiernan, Daniel Kiernan, Bill Cronick, Joyce Lee, Alton Leonard, Trudy Leonard, Brad Lina Weaver, Jonathan Strickland, and Daniel Taylor. Live sound effects were performed by Tony Fuller and Lily. Amanda Baskin was floor manager. Our stage manager was Sarah Taylor. Sound crew were Henry Howard, David Carter, and Sonia. Music was composed and performed by Brad Weege. The show was produced and directed by William Allen Ritch. I am your announcer, Thomas E. Fuller, and we are the Atlanta Radio Theater Company. Good night.
ARTC.org.